Today's episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast is brought to you by Baylor Scott & White Sports Performance Center, athletes made here. The Sports Performance Center was developed with one goal in mind: to maximize human performance through movement and recovery. Their team of expert performance sports coaches and trainers will guide you to achieve your performance goals. That's the Baylor Scott & White Sports Performance Center, located at the Star in Frisco. This episode is also brought to you by Allen Dental Studio. Located off Bethany Drive in Allen, their office was designed with you, the patient, in mind, which means an excellent and enjoyable experience. From cosmetics to implants, you deserve a perfect smile, and Allen Dental Studio can make that happen. Also, don't want to leave out another longtime friend of the podcast, Texan Senior Residential Care Homes. With locations in Carrollton and Dallas, Texan Senior Residential Care Homes offers an affordable, high-quality alternative to senior living. Call now at 469-400-7650. That's Texan, spelled T-E-X-S-E-N, Texan Senior Residential Care Homes. Welcome to another episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast. My name is Matt Welch, being joined by Kendrick Johnson, Bryan Murphy, and Devin Hasson. Gentlemen, it is Monday. Hope everybody had a happy holiday. Hope the holidays were nice to everybody here. But yes, now with us back on the podcast after a week off, high school football is in the rearview mirror. So as we now begin to focus full-fledged on high school basketball, that means looking back on it's late December, so that means at least in terms of high school basketball, that we just had a very busy week of high school hoops and the annual slate of holiday basketball tournaments as really kind of the last hurdle to clear before everybody now just dives headfirst into district play. You got districts like Frisco that are already almost halfway through their district schedule, and others that'll for a lot of the boys districts, they'll start later on this week. The girls have already played a couple district games, but once you clear that those holiday tournaments, you kind of have a much more firm idea as to what these teams are going to be now heading into that district slate. So let's focus on the holiday basketball tournaments and just some takeaways from what several of our local teams did over the past few days. I don't know, guys. Like, what was, I guess, across the Metroplex for your local schools? What was kind of the biggest takeaway for y'all locally as far as what your teams showed in the final tournament of the season?
For me, McKinney boys has a very bright future. They have two sophomores and two freshmen that can play. I don't want to get names mixed up because they got mispronunciations, but you can tell their core four players are sophomores and freshmen that can play. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do in district when the stakes are high. This is their first go at it as the lead guys, but they know in the back of their heads they got at least two more chances at this stage. And it's going to be interesting to see how they match up with a Plano, how they match up with Allen, since they're different type teams.
With McKinney, what tournament were they in, do you recall?
I saw them play North over the break. They played North and they played a tournament away in Austin or something like that. Right on. And then girls-wise, McKinney North, I expect them to go to the playoffs and beat a Frisco team, keeping that thing from last year. I'm here y'all with some KJOs, some hot Kendrick opinions.
Oh, that's new.
Wait, what?
That doesn't make...
What's the HKOs?
So the Johnson Damas is no more?
And
now what is this now?
HKO, hot Kendrick opinions.
HKO. At least an XKO for a second. There's not an X in any of those words.
So you're with an HKO right now.
Yeah. McKinney North girls will beat one of the Frisco teams in the first round to get to the second round. They have the right core. They have Chelsea Wooten, I don't know if you've seen them play. She's a nice individual one-on-one player. And Amaria Fields, who was Offensive Player of the Year in that district. So if they can find a way to win that district, they can get that bottom feed fourth slot in Frisco. Because there's no matchup, as Bryan knows.
For me, it was a busy Saturday. So I was out of town seeing family over in California Monday through Friday. So, the second I got back in town, though, because our deadlines are all wonky this week, so I had to obviously get some stuff covered on Saturday for, I guess, the championship round of our holiday tournament. So plotting out my schedule, and I managed to hit 5 games from 9 a.m. through 7 p.m. at night. At 3 different tournaments. And as far as just some takeaways from that, I got to start off the day out in Duncanville at at Sandra Meadows to get to see Plano take on mighty DeSoto, number one state and nationally ranked DeSoto in the semifinals of the Sandra Meadows Classic. In a game that, I was intrigued by this because, I was really, really optimistic about Plano's chances of, even though they lost their best player, a potential McDonald's All-American in Jordan Merritt, that they still had a chance to potentially win District 9-6A because of some of the results that they had produced since then. And one of those games was, I think like within the first week or two after they lost Merritt, was playing DeSoto in the championship of the Cowtown Classic in Fort Worth, only losing to DeSoto by 5 points. They really found a way to do what really no one else in the state has done, and that's like consistently slow down with, one of the most high-powered attacks in the entire state.
Props to Coach Welch, great coach.
And then getting to see in a rematch, so you're wondering, okay, well, maybe was that game an aberration, and maybe DeSoto has a better idea as to what to expect this time around? And no, it was another just competitive back and forth, down to the wire defensive struggle. Who knows how much of that was because this game took place at 9 a.m. and how tired a lot of those those players must have been. But this was a game that DeSoto ends up winning just 45-42. But Plano, acquitted itself very well. Michaela Edens, who's really had to kind of take on that lead scoring role between her and Amaya Brandon with Merritt being out. But Edens was hitting some big time shots against those tall, rangy, front court players for DeSoto. Plano's defense is always going to be solid, even with or without Merritt. They have the system there is just so
kind of like a little mini Syracuse system.
Mm-hmm. And they do such a good job on defense, and they forced DeSoto into a ton of turnovers. It's just Plano's going to go through some bouts, and you saw this in their district opening loss to Allen, where finishing inside is going to be a bit of a chore, and that's where not having a player like Merritt who could just get you an easy 20 inside whenever she felt like it. That's where that kind of hurts. But just on the strength of their defense,
they're going to be in every game.
Yeah, they're still going to be really, really competitive just about every night in this district. But then to see what they did against DeSoto, and then for the entire tournament, because they had two of these games that they won on buzzer beaters.
I saw one of them the first quarter. For the testament to their defense, they can do a lot of girl teams don't switch. Mm-hmm. They switch very accurately. Oh, yeah. And if you don't have a ball handler and you're playing Coach Belcher and them, you're gonna get beat. Yeah. You got to have at least two ball handlers to beat their type of pressure, because they have a good mix of trap and zone, which, like it's on the girl side, you don't really see that they're a man team or a zone team. They don't go back and forth, and that's what Plano does.
Like Maggie Robbins, their point guard, she's an absolute menace on defense. And then, this is a
very quick athlete.
It's really, really young. They got a lot of sophomores and juniors that are seeing major minutes that weren't part of the rotation last year. You have a player like Sanaya Murphy-Sowers, who came in and gave them some really promising defensive minutes as well. There's a lot to look forward to with this Plano team, even though, again, the ceiling for the season's, taking a big hit, though, not having Merritt in the fold. But, they finished fourth in the Sandra Meadows tournament, which is that's about as good a girls basketball tournament as you'll find in the state. And they did a really, really solid job. So they're still, again, it's still a very, promising season ahead for Plano. And then, from there, I think, some of the other big takeaways that I had, the Capel boys over at the Allen In and Out tournament. That's a tournament that their profile and the star power that tournament's drawn has really, really gone up in recent years. There are a ton of state-ranked teams there. Capel finishes third in the gold bracket, which are really, given some of the the caliber of teams, they're like Allen and Dickinson teams that are ranked in the top 10, top 15 in the state. For Capel, which is unranked right now, to get that kind of a finish, really, really promising as they now into a district schedule that's going to be an absolute freaking war over in 6XA. It's a really tough district to figure out right now. I got to see them in the third place game against Mesquite Horn, who's had a pretty promising season in their own right. In Capel, they ended up winning this game, kind of going away. I want to say 62-48 was the final. But it was like what jumps out about this Capel team, because they lost the district MVP last year, Charika Mon, and a player who was responsible for so many just clutch moments for them. So they didn't have a ton of real proven varsity experience back, but man, that's a smart team. They move the ball so well, and they've got, they check all the boxes. They've got guys that can space the floor. They've got, just long, rangy athletes that can disrupt, shots at the rim and finish inside. That's a really, really high IQ team, and they did a really good job, just kind of exploiting, Horn in transition and just finding open shots, and they really kind of controlled that game, with the exception of a few moments there in the third quarter when Horn's defensive energy kind of ramped up a bit, and they got going. But that Capel team's really, really solid. Adam Musa was named all tournament, and he gave them some really, really productive minutes there in helping kind of slow down that mini run that Horn made there in the third quarter. And then they got two sophomores in Anthony Black and Ryan. I might mispronounce the last name, Agarwal, but two really rangy sophomores that kind of complement each other nicely. Ryan does a good job as just this lights out, dead eye shooter for them. And then Anthony Black I think he had like 4 steals and 3 blocks, and he was the star receiver for the football team. Capel's still got plenty in the tank, and that's a team that's going to be a force in 6A. I don't know, guys. How about y'all from y'all's areas? What were some takeaways?
So sticking with the Sandra Meadows Classic, which is just loaded from teams all across the country that I've never.
I love the out-of-state flavor that tournament always draws. You always
get Californians and Tennessees that can play.
10, 15
11 out-of-state teams.
Yeah,
I was impressed with the McKinney, with the Frisco player, the sophomore.
That's what I was gonna get to.
She's a baller.
Jazio Owens Barnett, sophomore, best player at Frisco Liberty. She made the all-tournament team from the Sandra Meadows Classic.
Is she best player in Frisco this year?
Ooh, one of them. It's still too early to even though they're already a million games in the district.
It's like 200 players to choose from.
Yeah, 10 teams. Yeah, she's one of the front runners for a district MVP. But she led them in scoring in every game except one in that tournament. They played that Tennessee team that won the silver bracket. Granted they lost, but it's the same thing that happened with Liberty last year. They went through a gauntlet, non-district schedule, and then they're playing in the Sandra Meadows Classic, and they didn't place, but they're getting better because of it. And we saw the end result last year, being state runners-up in 5A. It's a very different team this year. Frisco Liberty. There's a lot of players that I don't recognize from that didn't play at all last year. They graduated 4 of their 5 starters. But Jazzy Owens Barnett, who was really a 6th man a lot of the time last year, she stepped in. She's become a superstar for this team, and Liberty's a team to watch out for. They're already 5-0 in district play, 9-5A, and although like I said, there wasn't a bunch of wins as results in this tournament. Still strong showings, playing teams very close. Very, some of the top teams, around the region of the country.
Yeah.
So Liberty, really strong showing there, and a team to watch moving forward.
Devin, how about you?
Well, you brought up Horn earlier. I wanted to touch on Horn real quick because, you talk about a team, you just don't know what you're going to get, but there's so much potential there.
For sure.
You just look at the tournament last week. In their opener, they played San Antonio Wagner, the number 2 team in 5A, and they beat them. Then they ran into Katy Morton Ranch, another state-ranked team, and they beat them. Then they ran into Allen, the host, and they led most of that game and had their chances.
Dangerously close to winning that game.
And they had a chance to basically win against 3 state opponents. We noted earlier they vaulted back into the state rankings, but they also had their off moments against Capella. You mentioned they went cold and they didn't have quite the intensity from start to finish that maybe they needed to. So. We'll see what happens. It's really hard to gauge. These holiday tournaments are a great way to engage against really top competition, but it's about the grind of the season. It's about developing that consistency. Once the district gets started, that will really, kind of tell what kind of team they are. But I just think from a sheer potential standpoint, when you got guys like Zakir Sawyer, like Devin Hancock, Preston Amon, a very versatile big guy who can pass the ball, who does a little bit of everything. I think they got the tools to make a run in 11-6A and potentially make the run to the regional tournament based on how those brackets shake out. Another team, I guess on the boys side, Rowlett won the silver division, competed in the silver division at the Allen tournament, where they got 3rd place. Lost to John Paul in the semifinals. John Paul team that.
Yeah, we'll get to them.
I heard it was argued that they shouldn't have been in that bracket, but
they should not have.
I'll get to that in a minute. But a Rowlett team that has struggled early on. They missed the playoffs last year. They weren't completely healthy coming into this season, but they're starting to get their entire roster back to where they kind of saw it preseason, and a couple nice wins. They beat Cedar Hill in the first game, and just the loss of John Paul aside, really kind of showed what they can do when they're at full strength. And so I think the Rowlett, again, they weren't picked to make the playoffs in 6A this year. But certainly, I think they kind of made their case as being a team to watch as we start district play on Friday.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Star Local Media. 14 newspapers and websites with a print distribution of 270,000 homes and monthly page views of 600,000 online. Star Local Media, your community voice for news. And now, let's get back to the podcast. Yeah, above all else, I think the biggest takeaway for me, at least within my coverage area, was actually the private school level, where John Paul might have both the best boys basketball team in TAPS and the best girls basketball team in TAPS.
John Paul?
John Paul. Yeah, I mean, we spent all this time, crowing about the football team and all the great work that they did this past season with their best year ever. The basketball teams, though, were kind of primed for big years, like looking at what they did last year and the experience that they all had coming back. And, have they ever built off of it? I mean, the John Paul boys right now are 24-1 on the season.
And who's that one loss to?
Frisco Memorial.
Yeah, I can't figure them out because they beat really good teams and then they lose another one. It's like, let's go.
They play level of the competition.
Yeah, but they're without their best player, and Isaiah Foster, sophomore point guard. He tore his knee up in the very first game of the season, so they'll be without him this year. But yeah, I actually saw John Paul play too early in the year. I know. I just went to check them out. They're playing that NDAA team, North Dallas Adventist Academy, whatever it's called, and they were without their best player too. Because I went to go see them because they had a 5-star kid. My buddy of mine is one of the assistant coaches, and I was like, okay, John Paul, you were telling me that was pretty good. I mean, when I saw them play, granted, it was like the second week of the season. They were good, but I didn't think they were like best team in the state good. I mean, what have they got?
They got any blue chippers? They got to have a blue chipper or two.
They have their best player who was named they won the silver bracket of the Allen and Out Invitational, which the immediate reaction to that on social media was, wait, why is this team in the silver bracket? They were totally good enough to hang. I don't know if they would have won the gold bracket, but I mean, I would have loved to see them, throw down with the Allens and the Dickinsons and Horn and Capel and those teams. They've got a ton of depth. They have the entire starting 5 back essentially from last year's team, which went to the state semifinals.
I was about to say they don't have like a superstar, but they had just a bunch of guys.
But they go like 8-9 deep with like really quality players, so there's never a drop off in the quality of play.
So schools like Prestonwood are in trouble.
Prestonwood's been pretty solid too, but I don't know if they have the top. They don't have the top shelf talent that John Paul has this year. Now John Paul's they won the silver bracket. Jalen Tyson has been kind of the big name to emerge. He was actually a bench player for them last season. I got to see John Paul in the state semis last year where they lost to Prestonwood, and Jalen Tyson actually, despite coming off the bench, was the best player on the court for them, and he's really kind of built off of that. And he had I think 43 in the game against Rowlett and whatnot. I mean, he's been an awesome scorer for them this year. He actually got offered by Tech and TCU over the weekends. That's the kind of
good weekend
that they have on their hands.
Yeah, good weekend.
But it's not just him. It's the Tott brothers, Jalen and Jawan, Nathan Dominic, who's kind of a jack of all trades forward for them, and then some of the of the new kids that they brought in. They had Alex Zambi, who was one of the top returners at Plano West. He's now at John Paul.
So he left.
Yeah, he left, and then Allen had a sophomore that was on the JV, I believe, last year named Cameron Corrin. He's now at John Paul, and they just got Donovan Johnson from the football team. 6'5" tight end who started for the state semifinal on this team last year.
So who are they coaches? Can you play? Come on, John Paul.
So they've got.
You not playing over there?
Would Zambi be a starter at West?
Without question, yeah.
And he wasn't even.
Yeah, he was starting last year.
He's not even one of their 5 best players.
He comes off the bench for them. Yeah.
He provided good minutes.
Oh yeah. He's another kind of like Dominic, a guy who's just a nice glue guy and a guy who really kind of checks a lot of different boxes. Can really give you a lot of different.
Hey, my man, a glue guy.
But they've been really solid this year. They're 24-1. They've eclipsed 100 points on several occasions, and they had to gut out a tough game against Mansfield Summit in the championship game. But they've won 17 in a row, and they can
they defend? Like, do they defend they defend man to man, or they do the zones?
I haven't seen them in person yet, so I can't speak to that. I'm going to be seeing them in a couple weeks when they play Prestonwood. I wanted to see them on Saturday against in that championship game against Mansfield Summit, but that ran up against a game that I was already covering out at the McKinney North tournament. But yes, John Paul boys won their tournament. The John Paul girls became the first private school team since like the 70s to win the DISD holiday tournament. That's one of the most storied tournaments in the entire state. I believe this was the 80th year of the annual DISD holiday tournament. The John Paul girls are off to a great start. They're 23-3, and they're led by one of the top point guards in the state. I just mentioned, the Todd brothers on the boys team, Jalen and Jawan. Well, they have a sister on the girls team, Nevaeh Todd, who's committed to Oklahoma, one of the top point guards in the entire state. And she was absolute nails for them in that championship game against South Oak Cliff. She had 24 points, really helped kind of pick up the slack after their star post player Nevaeh Perkinson got in some foul trouble. Tot was money all tournament long. She was named the MVP. Parkinson and Delina Haley were named all tournament team. The John Paul girls are that's another team that could very well be playing itself into a potential state championship in some time, as they have their best team in quite a while. This isn't like the football program where we're like kind of everything for the football team this year was just brand new, all these milestones. The basketball teams have actually had a pretty fortified tradition over the last 5 to 8 years or so. The girls won a state title not too long ago. It was the first state title in school history. The boys have been to state several times, but it feels like this year though these are the two best teams on paper at least.
He like a John Paul story. He got it down.
Oh yeah, trust me, man. They're it's big things happening over there with John Paul basketball. So yes, that was honestly probably my biggest takeaway, at least as far as the stuff that I cover locally, was John Paul basketball, man. What a time.
John Paul wasn't the only private school in our coverage area.
That's right.
To win something this weekend in the Allen In-N-Out Holiday Invitational. Legacy Christian, defending state champions, they beat Salina, another one of my teams. And man, Jonathan Alexander, he's been a monster. 34 points in that game against Salina. He's their big man at Legacy Christian. He didn't start playing basketball until he was in middle school. I remember I met with the team last year after they won state. He's from Haiti, left his family, better opportunities in the United States, basketball opportunities, and he's making the most of them. And this Legacy Christian team, a team to keep an eye on. They returned a few starters from that team from last year, including Alexander. They had a strong showing in that 3A, 4A gold bracket at the Allen tournament, and they look good.
Mm-hmm. Then there was also the game, I guess, at the very end of the Allen In-N-Out tournament. Of course, the hosts of the entire thing, Allen, which is they've won their host tournament the last 3 years, and often doing so in pretty convincing fashion. All three of their championship victories have been by double digits. Team finally pushed back on them this year, though. The Dickinson team, which is, I believe what you said, Devin, up to number 2 in the state. Mm-hmm. It is very much merited, man. Yeah, Dickinson is that is a squad right there. And I got to see them. That was the last game I got to cover on Saturday. Was seeing Dickinson versus Allen in the championship game. Because my previous game I was at covering the final of the McKinney North Holiday Classic between Louisville and Lakeview Centennial. That game ran a little bit long, so I didn't get over to Allen until about midway through the first quarter. But I walk into the gym, and right out of the chute, Dickinson's already up 15-3 on Allen. Oh my goodness. They just punched him straight in the mouth, and getting to see kind of how this Dickinson team works, because I knew going in that they had one of the top players in the state, in Tremont Mark, who's committed to Houston.
He's a great one-on-one player. So highlights.
Yes, they have a lot of great one-on-one players, and that was kind of it's a very unique style of play, because a lot of their offense was just a bunch of dribble handoffs until they
old school.
Until they just isolate one of their. They have a backcourt that's senior laden. They have Tremont Mark and then Marcus Williams, Deuce Guidry, and they would just basically isolate one of those players until they got a matchup they liked, and then just let them go to work. And they're 3 players that can get just about any shot that they want on the floor. It seems like they're all bring different things to the table physically, but different styles of play. But they're all 3 just terrific offensive players, and they got enough from the worker bee types to really kind of hold off. Allen made a huge push. Allen was able to erase a 15-point deficit and actually took the lead on them 2 times there in the fourth quarter. But yeah, then just a little bit too much though in the tank for that Dickinson team, as they got 3 guys.
How did Allen turn the tide? How did they make the comeback? They press.
They ramped things up on defense, but they finally started slowing down, because it sounds like Dickinson. The part that I missed of the game, Dickinson was just lights out shooting the ball. They just came out, and they've got a lot of guys that can sprint, and they can spread the floor, and they got
Jesuit S from last year.
And Allen has some, obviously they have a ton of athleticism on that team. It's one of the most athletic teams that Allen's ever had. And they were able to, scrap enough on defense to at least limit those one-on-one shots that Dickinson was knocking down earlier in the game, and then that just kind of opened some things up in transition. You had Manny Obaseki going to work. Manny, who's one of the top players
CTV
in program history. He had his offensive game working in a big way. Tyland Elder was knocking down threes. Bryce Kennedy was bruising folks inside, and it basically just boiled down to big 3 versus big 3, and just Dickinson's had just a little bit more in the end, but not. Allen's didn't come away from that game feeling down on itself or anything. If anything, Coach McCullough afterwards was really, proud of the comeback that they showed, because that's the kind of thing that you're going to need in 9-6A when they get, when they face the Prospers and the Jesuits of the district, and just
you're gonna have an off game.
Knowing that the team has that resolve to at least dig out of a deep hole against an elite team, and even in defeat, Allen still was able to turn in a pretty good showing. You had Tylen Elder and Bryce Kennedy both get all tournament, and Allen they enter district now with 4 losses, which doesn't sound like much, but that actually matches the entire total from last season. Like in hindsight, it's crazy that that Allen team last year only lost 4 games and whatnot. But still, their losses have all come to like teams that are ranked in like the top 10 of the state and whatnot. So they'll still be pretty solid going forward. Let's see. Was there anything else that jumped out to you guys?
I missed a couple. I touched on the boys earlier. Just a couple quick notes on the girls. We talked about the Sandra Meadows Classic and how many good teams are out there. Saxe and Horn both competed out there. Saxe and Horn are perennial playoff teams, but they play in this kind of tournament to prepare them for, February, March. Yeah. And especially Saxe, who was at the state tournament just a couple of years ago. They lost to Duncanville, the number 1 team in the state, and prohibitive favorite, I think, at this point in time to win the state title, and they lost to Cedar Hill, who's number 4 in the state. The game against Cedar Hill was close. The game against Duncanville wasn't. But what Saxe does, and the reason they play these games and the way they schedule the way they do, is to learn and to prepare for next month. And so I'm interested to see what they do. Coach Donna McCullough is one of the best coaches in the state, and she's going to put this as a learning lesson. And they've run roughshod over that district in recent years. Lakeview may have something to say about it this year, but
I'll get to them in a minute.
Yeah. I mean, but what Saxe's done in the past is they've taken their experiences from these holiday tournaments, used them in district play with new players, with younger players, to incorporate it. That way, when the playoffs roll around, they're a different team than they are at this point in time. Same thing for Horn to a certain degree. Horn's been a little bit banged up with injuries. So they haven't been at full strength yet, but they did the same thing. They went 1-2. That's not the results they wanted to, but they're playing top level competition, and that's something that's gonna serve them well, because they're already thinking about the playoffs. And there's still a lot of business to take care of, because that's shaping up to be a good district with Rockwall, with Longview and Tyler Lee, who are both off to excellent starts in East Texas. Not to mention a very improved Mesquite team, and as those Rockwall Heath and North Mesquite. But Horns, their mindset is playoffs. They've never missed the playoffs since becoming a varsity program. So they're thinking playoffs, and so their mindset is, what can we do right now to improve, and playing that level of competition in Duncanville is how you do it.
You mentioned the Saxe girls, and I'm curious how many times just during this reign of terror that they've inflicted on this district that they're in, how many times have they had like a potential foil? Has there been a team that like you thought might have a chance of perhaps giving them a run?
Lakeview a couple of years ago, last year they won 57 district games in a row. Last year,
dominance.
Yeah, last year they didn't have any games decided by single digits. I mean, and even the one that was decided by 11 was a blowout, and they just put the reserves in and it got close late. Lakeview this season, Lakeview team you saw, they played in the finals of the Colwell tournament, and Saxe won 46-43. Now, granted, Saxe was up by 6 to 8 points for most of the game. It didn't get down to a 3-point game until Lakeview made a basket with as time ran out just to make it a 1-possession game. But Lakeview's got some athleticism, and especially with Saxe not having Jayla Brooks, their point guard, who was lost before the start of the season, is gone for the year. That makes a big difference. They've had other girls step up. Brianna Salazar's kind of stepped into that point guard role. Chris Rose is a freshman that stepped in and become an immediate contributor. But again, Lakeview, I think this year is going to be their top competition. Rowlett may have something to say about it, because Rowlett's got some versatility with some of their players as well. But yeah, over the time, it's really just been, when I say dominant, I mean, the 57 wins speaks for itself, because it really hasn't, they haven't had, I think they've had maybe, I counted it up last year, but maybe 3 games during that stretch that were actually competitive.
Close calls.
Yeah, and even that it was.
But just seeing them play for a couple minutes, they got length and they got athleticism in the wings.
Yeah, no, they're very well rounded. And again, I think if Jayla was, especially with the emergence of Chris Rose and whatnot, if Jayla Brooks was healthy, I think they would be considered a strong contender to make the state tournament. Not to say they still can't do it, but that's just such a tough region to come out of that, we'll see how the rest of the season goes. But yeah, I mean, Saxe is still going to be there. And like I say, they have one of the best coaches in the state, Donna McCullough, and she'll have them ready to go.
Yeah, I'm just curious to see what this Lakeview team can do now after seeing them, come away with a tournament victory at the McKinney North Holiday Classic and look the part. I mean, they were able to really grind down a solid Louisville team in the championship game, a Louisville team that was coming off a win over Irving MacArthur, a state-ranked Irving MacArthur in their last district game. And yeah, I mean, the thing that stuck out so much about Centennial is that the ball pressure is just relentless with them. I mean, even even after Louisville would secure a defensive rebound, like you look up to throw an outlet pass, but there's a Centennial player right there in your face. Like they literally don't stop defending. They don't let's get back on defense and whatnot and try to just get set up. Like they don't make anything easy on Louisville, and it was relentless, the pressure that they applied there. And then they've got a really skilled low post player in Sanaya Baker, who she was the best player on the floor in that game and really helped kind of put the clamps on Louisville's go-to scorer, Layla Lawrence. Lawrence had 6 points there in the first quarter, and I think she only made 2 shots from the field the last 3 quarters. And all the while, Baker pours in 18 points, and she was named the tournament MVP and whatnot. And that's a team that's just the defensive energy that they play with. That's going to be something that I can give a lot of teams in that district some trouble.
Right.
They were impressive there. Louisville still had a really productive showing in placing second in that tournament. But then I got to see beforehand Lake Dallas. Getting my first crack at a Lake Dallas team that actually began the week state ranked for the first time in maybe forever. Lake Dallas, who's had a really, really encouraging start to their season under new head coach Jordan Davis, who came over from Marcus, and getting to see this team, just a team that could potentially contend for a top 2 seed or whatever in District 8-5A. I got to see kind of a skeleton crew out there because they were missing half their roster. So you had a lot of they have essentially the entire starting lineup back, but a lot of their production comes from the Elliott sisters, JoJo Elliott and Georgia Elliott, and both of them were out of town on for a family trip and whatnot that had been planned way in advance. So there was no getting around it and whatnot. And then one of their other the anchors to their backcourt, Bailey Broughton, she sprained her ankle earlier in the tournament. She was out too for this game. I got to see in their consolation semifinal against Princeton. So you had essentially players playing out of position, like Dorian Norris, who's one of their best players. She's having to play point guard. That's not her natural position. You had basically a rotation that Coach Davis has never had to use this season, and that was essentially what they had to roll with for the entire tournament. And they still turned in some pretty productive results, all things considered. They were able to get a close win over Little, a team that they're going to see, 2 times in district play and whatnot. So it was really kind of tough to use that as any sort of gauge on what Lake Dallas has been capable of this season. They got a huge game coming up later on this week, though, on Friday against Denton Braswell, who's ranked in the top 10 of the state and off to their best start in program history. And it's kind of I was really kind of hoping this would be a chance to kind of get a barometer as to what Lake Dallas might be able to do in district. And all in all, though, I didn't get to really learn anything. They had a lineup that's never going to be used at all during district play. Let's see, is that, have I touched on this or anything else? I guess just some quick notes on just some other Louisville ISD stuff. I mentioned the Louisville girls, they placed second in the McKinney North tournament. The Flower Mound girls were second over in Keller Central as they put together a really strong run. Ran into a hot LD Bell team. LD Bell was led by one of the best players in the country, and Myra Gordon. Myra Gordon was only the 4th leading scorer for LD Bell in the championship game, so that's probably a sign that you probably didn't fare too well when a 4 or 5-star prospect is their 4th leading scorer. LD Bell won that game going away 60-37. But Flower Mound still got really productive tournaments from Maddie Cox, who's just the latest in the long line of just dominant Cox family athletes. You think Lauren Cox, what is she going to be, like the top pick in the WNBA draft coming up? And
is she good? I heard she's more like a 3-star than like a superstar. Play,
so I can't speak.
I saw her in summer league. I didn't see her in school ball.
Maddie Cox is only a freshman. She's already tearing it up at the varsity level as just a freshman.
6 foot.
Yeah. It's like all of them. Some incredible athletic genes in that family. She was named all tournament along with Paulina Porter. Flower Mound's a team that's going to be in the mix for a district title there out in 6-6A, depending on how much time Sarah Andrews misses for McKinney. Not McKinney, but Irving MacArthur. Flower Mound had a productive tournament. Otherwise, that's I don't know. That's all I got. You guys have anything else you wanted to add?
Nope.
Alrighty. Well, we'll be back on Thursday. Like I said, you got some districts here and there that are playing games throughout the these first couple days of the week, but everything gets going full-fledged on Friday. With the start of district play on the boys' side for most of our districts, and that's going to be the theme of Thursday's podcast as we kind of take a deep dive into what our boys' teams have shown up to this point, and kind of how we're feeling about these districts heading into the start of conference play. That'll do it for this episode of the podcast, though, folks. Appreciate y'all for checking this out. We will be back on Thursday. You enjoy your week, and we will talk to y'all later.